The defender of Islam, Salah ad-Din. He conquered the Holy Land, then died with barely a coin.
In the autumn of 1187, the Christian world reeled from news that shook its foundations. Jerusalem, the holiest city in Christendom, held by Crusader forces for nearly 90 years, had fallen. But what stunned observers almost as much as the military defeat was what did not happen afterward. There was no massacre, no river of blood, no burning of churches, no mass enslavement of the defeated population. The Muslim commander who retook the city ordered his soldiers to stand down, arranged ransoms for civilians, and ensured safe passage for thousands of men, women, and children. His name was Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to history as Saladin. In an age defined by religious warfare of savage brutality, he became the rare figure remembered with admiration by both sides of the conflict. Saladin's full name translates roughly as Righteousness of Faith, Joseph, son of Ayyub. He was born in 1137 or 1138, historians debate the exact year, in Tikrit, a city on the Tigris River in what is today Iraq. He was of Kurdish ethnicity, born into a military family that served the Zengid dynasty of northern Syria and Iraq. Rising through military command and political statecraft, he became Sultan of Egypt, Syria, Yemen, and parts of Mesopotamia, one of the most powerful rulers of the medieval Islamic world, and one of the most recognized military leaders in history. Saladin was born into a world torn between competing Muslim dynasties and under constant pressure from the Crusader states that had carved up the Levant since 1099. His father, Najm ad-Din Ayyub, was a senior officer serving first Zengi and then his son Nur ad-Din. The family was Kurdish in origin, from the region of Divin in present-day Armenia, though they had become thoroughly integrated into Arab Islamic political culture. Saladin's early years were spent in Baalbek and Damascus, where his father held administrative posts. He received an education in Islamic theology, Arabic language, and courtly culture. According to his later biographer, Bahar ad-Din ibn Shaddad, Saladin was drawn more to scholarship than soldiering in his youth. He reportedly memorized large portions of al-Hariri's Maqamat and was deeply versed in Islamic jurisprudence. Nothing about the young Saladin marked him as an obvious future conqueror. The most important figure in forming Saladin's career was Nur ad-Din Mahmud, the Zengid ruler of Syria, who became his patron and overlord. Nur ad-Din governed with intense Sunni piety and framed his campaigns explicitly as holy war against the Crusader presence. He gave Saladin a model of leadership in which political power and religious obligation were inseparable. Equally crucial was Saladin's uncle, Azad ad-Din Shirkuh, a brilliant field commander who served Nur ad-Din and who dragged the reluctant young Saladin into the Egyptian campaigns of the 1160s. Saladin reportedly resisted joining the first expedition, preferring his scholarly life in Damascus. That decision was overruled, and the Egyptian experience, siege warfare, coalition politics, cross-cultural negotiation, formed the soldier and statesman the world would later encounter. Between 1164 and 1169, Nur ad-Din sent 3 successive military campaigns to Egypt to prevent the Crusaders from exploiting the weakened Fatimid Caliphate. Shirkuh led the forces, Saladin served under him. In 1164, during the first campaign, Saladin defended the city of Alexandria against a combined Crusader-Egyptian siege for months with a small garrison, his first documented act of significant independent military command. In January 1169, Shirkuh was appointed vizier of Egypt by the Fatimid Caliph. Just 2 months later, Shirkuh died, and Saladin, approximately 31 years old, was appointed his successor. He was now the most powerful man in Egypt, though nominally still a servant of both the Fatimid Caliph and his distant overlord Nur ad-Din. Saladin's first transformative act was dismantling the Fatimid Caliphate. The Fatimids were Shia Muslims who had governed Egypt since 969, more than 200 years. By 1171, Saladin had replaced Fatimid officials, reorganized the military, and prepared the theological ground. When the last Fatimid Caliph, Al-Adid, fell gravely ill in September 1171, Saladin ordered that the Friday sermon in Cairo be read in the name of the Sunni Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, a symbolic act that ended Fatimid sovereignty without a battle. When Al-Adid died days later, there was no resistance. Saladin had converted an entire caliphate's religious allegiance through administration, timing, and patience, rather than bloodshed. It was the clearest possible demonstration that he was not simply a military officer. He was a political strategist of the highest order. After Nur ad-Din's death in 1174, Saladin moved to fill the power vacuum across the Muslim Near East. By 1175, he controlled much of Syria. In 1177, however, he suffered a severe reversal at the Battle of Montgassard, where approximately 500 Knights Templar led a surprise charge that routed his much larger army, directed by the young leper king Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. It was a sobering lesson in overconfidence. Saladin rebuilt and returned to patient strategic consolidation. In 1183, he captured Aleppo, completing his encirclement of the Crusader states. By 1186, Mosul had come under his authority, uniting the Muslim world from Egypt to Mesopotamia under a single command for the first time in a generation. The decisive moment came on July 4, 1187, at the Battle of Hattin, near the Sea of Galilee. Saladin lured the Crusader army into a waterless march across a plateau in the July heat, cut off their retreat, and destroyed them almost entirely. An estimated 20,000 soldiers were killed or captured. The True Cross, the Crusaders' most sacred relic, was seized. On October 2, 1187, Jerusalem surrendered. Unlike the Crusader conquest of 1099, which ended in massacre, Saladin permitted Christians to ransom themselves and depart safely. Those who could not pay were in many cases released by Saladin or his brother Al-Adil. Even hostile Christian chroniclers acknowledged the restraint. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, brought Richard I of England, the Lionheart, into direct opposition. The two leaders never met in person, but exchanged ambassadors and gifts with a formality that struck contemporaries as remarkable. Richard won tactical victories, including at Arsuf in September 1191, but Jerusalem remained out of reach. The campaign ended with the Treaty of Jaffa in 1192. Jerusalem stayed in Muslim hands, and Christian pilgrims received the right of access to the holy sites. What elevated Saladin beyond military victory was the perceived gap between his conduct and the violent norms of his era. The chivalrous treatment of the defeated, the personal generosity, the restraint in Jerusalem, these became stories that crossed cultures and centuries. European medieval literature transformed him into a paragon of chivalric virtue. Dante placed him among the virtuous pagans in the Inferno. Boccaccio featured him in the Decameron as a model of noble generosity. A Muslim ruler who became a hero figure in Christian literary tradition, that was an extraordinary, historically unique achievement in medieval culture. Baha ad-Din ibn Shaddad described a man of genuine piety and generosity bordering on financial recklessness. Saladin reportedly died with almost no personal wealth. Despite ruling an empire spanning thousands of miles, he had given it away in charity. Some accounts note there was insufficient gold in his treasury, even to cover his funeral expenses. He was not without ruthlessness. The execution of Reynald of Chatillon after Hattin, a lord who had repeatedly broken truces and attacked Muslim pilgrims, showed the steel beneath the magnanimous surface. But his driving motivation appears to have been a genuine fusion of religious conviction and political ambition. The reconquest of Jerusalem was for him a sacred obligation as much as a strategic goal. His leadership style was direct and personal. He moved with his armies in the field, kept counsel with scholars and commanders alike, and visited his wounded soldiers personally. Saladin's failures are as instructive as his victories. The defeat at Mongisard in 1177 exposed weaknesses in his management of large offensive operations. He was unable to retake the coastal cities Richard I captured during the Third Crusade. The Crusader presence in the Holy Land survived his death by an entire century. His image of universal magnanimity is also complicated by the historical record. At Hattin, captured Knights Hospitaller and Templar were executed rather than ransomed, a deliberate policy that served military logic but cut against the chivalric legend. Non-Muslims in his territories faced legal discrimination under restored Sunni governance. The historian Ibn al-Athir, a near-contemporary, criticized Saladin for spending more energy fighting fellow Muslim rulers in the 1170s and 1180s than organizing resistance to the Crusaders. Saladin's capture of Jerusalem triggered the Third Crusade, involving 3 European monarchs and one of the largest military mobilizations of the medieval period. His unification of Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia under the Ayyubid dynasty shaped the region's politics for decades. His restoration of Sunni rule in Egypt, backed by newly founded madrasas, mosques, and charitable institutions, left a lasting imprint on Egyptian Islamic identity. In Western civilization, his legacy produced something equally remarkable: a Muslim ruler who entered the European cultural imagination as a figure of admiration, influencing literature and philosophy across centuries. Few leaders in world history have earned genuine respect from the very civilizations they defeated. Saladin died on March 4, 1193, in Damascus, at approximately 55 or 56 years of age, just months after the Treaty of Jaffa. His tomb beside the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus remains a site of historical pilgrimage. In 1898, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany visited and donated a marble cenotaph, a gesture laden with its own imperial-era political symbolism. In the 20th century, Arab nationalist movements revived Saladin as a symbol of Muslim unity and resistance. The eagle attributed to his heraldry appeared in the national emblems of Egypt, Iraq, Palestine, and Yemen. Films, novels, and stage productions continued to reimagine him, most recently in Ridley Scott's 2005 film, Kingdom of Heaven. Academic reassessment has been ongoing. Anne-Marie Erdé's exhaustive 2008 biography separated the historical figure from 8 centuries of accumulated legend, revealing a man more politically calculating and humanly contradictory than either his admirers or critics have typically acknowledged. What Saladin's life ultimately reveals is something more complicated than heroism. He was a man born into a world of competing empires, religious absolutisms, and relentless war, and he chose, within that world, to pursue power through patience, calculation, genuine faith, and occasional ruthlessness. He did not invent mercy, but he practiced it in circumstances where almost no one expected it, and in doing so, he made himself unforgettable to allies and enemies alike. His story is a reminder that reputation is built not only from victories, but from how a person treats the defeated, and that across 8 centuries and across civilizational boundaries, the image of a ruler who could have burned a city but chose not to has proven far more durable than any fortress he ever built or ever lost.